Good day, aviation enthusiasts, pilots, and flight fans. We love big birds. Learning to fly and becoming a pilot in charge is a dream for many and a cherished reality for some. In this episode, we discuss flight training and why it needs a major shakeup. This may well be seen in some quarters as highly controversial, so buckle up and let's talk about it. Firstly, what qualifies me as an expert on the subject? Not a huge amount, to be fair. My flight training only extends to gliders going back some 25 years. I'm not even current at the moment, but let me explain. Let's take a slight detour to Finland. This is a country where, in order to get a driver's license, you go through a grueling set of advanced driving and car control training in order to be prepared for the typical icy and snowy conditions on their roads. If you don't pass this, you don't get to drive a car. It is no wonder that Finland has produced some of the best Formula One and rally car drivers over the years. They are essentially some of the most capable drivers on any road anywhere in the world. The problem: a private pilot's license in most jurisdictions require a minimum of 40 hours flight time, made up of instruction, cross-country flying, and a number of competencies. The issue isn't that the training is useful, but that the coverage of eventuality and emergency training is inadequate. Simulating stalls, spins, engine failure, and practicing advanced maneuvers, crosswind and emergency landings barely scratch the surface. Hours and hours of uneventful flying builds a false sense of competence, which creates an environment that leads to questionable decision-making during sudden and unexpected emergencies. Keep this point in mind as we'll be circling back to it. In real life, even seasoned pilots become flustered, stressed, zone out, freeze up, become partially or fully incapacitated, and lose fine motor responses as fight or flight instincts kick in. No pun intended. Serious, emerging, developing, and escalating emergencies typically do not afford the luxury of referencing checklists, nor standard operating procedure handbooks. Eventualities like that require a high degree of situational awareness, tactical ability, as well as muscle memory to back it all up. For general aviation, we haven't even mentioned factors like G-forces, disorientation, and other human factors that lead to forced errors, as opposed to unforced ones, like not calculating performance parameters, nor checking weight and balance envelopes before takeoff. Either way, there have been a significant number of aviation accidents in recent times that should be causing regulators sleepless nights. It's not that they are not trying, but pilot training needs an overhaul. Private pilot's license. This ought to be more of a graduated system where pilots first demonstrate proficiency in uneventful flying, that is, flying in fair weather and under normal operating conditions, whether VFR or IFR, then moving on to simulated emergencies to test their responses. These would be a series of scenarios of increasing complexity and difficulty until the trainee pilot is seasoned with muscle memory for virtually any eventuality. Competence here then affords the trainee a license. It should help cut the accident and death rates in general aviation drastically. It will also prepare pilots for what's to come should they want to proceed further into commercial operations. Not completing the simulated emergency training should severely limit the type of aircraft and conditions a pilot can operate under. Commercial and airline pilots. Similar to general aviation, the notion of flight hours and seniority for advancement needs to be dropped in favor of demonstrating competence in handling extreme emergency scenarios without the benefit of a co-pilot. On acquiring a commercial license, the pilot should be granted 1 bar on their epaulets. The current type rating system and all its aspects, including simulator training and assessments, must be classified as basic proficiency for operations and should constitute the 2nd bar on a pilot's epaulets. Pilots with an ATPL get a star in addition to the 2 bars afforded a commercial pilot on their epaulets. To rise up the ranks and acquire a 3-bar epaulet, pilots must graduate from a category of emergency scenarios deemed extreme. These will always assume the loss of the 2nd pilot and the breakdown of crew resource management if applicable, but with an expectation of full or partial survival outcomes for passengers and crew. Before we continue, what constitutes an extreme scenario for 3-bar epaulet training. Pilot monitoring overseas pilot flying attempt a Category 3 landing in icy conditions, gusty winds, and while nursing an engine failure. Wind shear is encountered on short final, which necessitates a go-around. However, simultaneously, the cockpit windscreen blows out from a foreign object strike and knocks out the pilot flying and hampers flight control movement. Communication systems are down or don't work. Assuming the pilot monitoring regains appropriate control and is halfway circling back to reattempt the landing, the second engine fails and flight instrument panels become inoperational. Now throw in fire and smoke in the cockpit. Can the pilot still stay focused, mentally calculate the new trajectory and approach required, and execute a safe landing that is enough to save all lives on board and on the ground? Captain material. To acquire the 4-bar epaulet, pilots must graduate from training that covers a class of emergency scenarios that build on that for a 3-bar epaulet, but deemed unsurvivable. This means not only are the scenarios extremely difficult and possibly unrealistic, but no matter what is attempted, no one survives the incident. This is to inject a particular psychological aspect of knowing it's a lost cause and assessing how the pilots and flight crew operate under this specific circumstance. For example, do they give up, prioritize life and property on the ground, or start praying? Line or training captains get all 4 bars merged into a single broad bar with an additional normal bar added. This would be similar to dress uniforms of general ranks in the military. The idea is pilots automatically become eligible for command if they acquire 4 bars on their epaulets and graduate to captain on passing a check ride. This means an airline pilot can fast-track to captain regardless of total flight hours. When a pilot changes aircraft type, they drop back down to 1 bar and work their way up through type rating, and then the categories of emergency scenarios to regain their bars and become captain again. This can be done as quickly or not as the case may be. Under this regime, the cream will rise to the top, while those encountering challenges or taking longer to complete their training carry on as first officers or are potentially weeded out. Seniority will no longer be an issue, and only the best in terms of ability make it through. Simulator training. There can be standard procedures to specific and isolated emergencies, but simulated emergency training must never be scripted. Every pilot must be fully abreast with all operating procedures, as well as maintain the ability to think outside the box and on their feet in order to deal with problems that may not be covered by any procedure. Pilots must be pushed and pressured in simulator training until they break in order for all parties to know their limits. Hours and hours of uneventful flying does little to prepare anyone for situations where there is an expected set of cascading issues, with everything going wrong more or less at the same time. A sudden and unexpected alarm with the possibility of losing the lives of passengers and crew will always be jarring. Only those who can consistently make the right calls under extreme pressure should be allowed to command an aircraft. As things stand now, there will be many pilots across the range from private to airline level who would have just made it over the threshold for their exams and check rides and are deemed safe to operate. I argue that some of these pilots will be in the group where extreme scenarios will cause them to freeze up, zone out, become incapacitated or disoriented, and therefore are likely to make mistakes, questionable decisions, and perhaps perform less than optimum. Any pilot that can successfully complete the necessary 3rd and 4th bar training would have earned their license and the right to be in command either privately or for commercial operations. Possibilities. The proposed approach could help cut the pilot shortage, as capable candidates will fast-track to command. A pilot with as little as 500 hours, but with the full complement of emergency scenario training, can be captain, which should make it cheaper and arguably more safe for flight operations, as only the brightest and most capable will make it to command. Given the choice, almost every individual would pick the surgeon with just 10 years experience, but with a 100% success rate in a variety of conditions over the 30-year veteran with an acceptable success record in a limited set of conditions. That said, why should aviation be any different when it comes to choice of captain and flight crew? Final word. I would get on a flight with a young captain that has barely 1,000 hours under his belt, but has excelled through tough and rigorous emergency scenario training and has done so whether with or without a co-pilot. And get on one where the captain has 10,000+ hours, but has just cleared the bar with simulator training and check rides under the current system, with proposals to cut down to just one pilot in the cockpit, and what looks like a high accident rate in aviation in the last few years. Is it time to rethink our approach to flight training? What do you think? Drop your views down in the comments, and let's have a debate.